Hey everyone and welcome. Thanks for joining me today for this explainer. So we're going to explore a story today that honestly hits incredibly close to home for, well, pretty much all of us. It's this deeply inspiring look at how we actually go about transforming our lives, and it totally challenges the very core of how we view self-improvement. All right, let's get right into it.
Okay, let's dive into this. Think about your own life for just a second. Have you ever wondered why, whenever we decide we need to make a change, we suddenly want to overhaul our entire life in a single day? Like, we make these grand declarations, right? We tell ourselves, okay, starting tomorrow, I'm waking up at 4 a.m., I'm going to grind for 10 hours straight, and I'll have the absolute perfect workout routine. We universally crave this instant overnight transformation. And you know, that universal desire is exactly where today's story begins.
Part 1, The Trap of Comparison. So, our story begins with a young village boy who was just deeply caught in the trap of comparison. And you can really empathize with him here because his insecurities were just so relatable. I mean, he was an average student, he didn't have any special athletic abilities on the sports field, and when it came to socializing, he wasn't naturally fluent or charismatic like some of the other kids who just seemed to effortlessly command attention. This constant comparison completely drained him, making him feel like he literally lacked any special qualities whatsoever.
So how did this young guy try to fix those feelings of inadequacy? Well, by doing exactly what we talked about earlier, deciding to make massive, sweeping changes all at once. He'd plan these intensely grueling hours-long study sessions or commit to heavy, exhausting workouts. But man, it was a vicious cycle of failure. He would push himself to his absolute breaking point for like 10 or 15 days, and then the inevitable burnout would hit, he'd revert right back to his old habits, and he'd just quit.
The emotional toll of these constant, repeated failures was just incredibly heavy. You know, it wasn't just about failing a workout. It was about losing faith in himself entirely. Every time he crashed and burned, he'd quietly tell himself, maybe I'm just not made for this. He began to internalize this failure, genuinely believing that he was fundamentally incapable of success, and that his life was simply never going to get better.
Part 2, The Grandfather's Rope.
One afternoon, feeling totally defeated, the boy was sitting in the courtyard when he spotted his grandfather working. He watched closely as the old man meticulously wove a piece of rope, slowly twisting one thin, super fragile thread together with another, and then adding another. After watching for over an hour with barely any visible progress, the frustrated boy finally asked, "Grandfather, what is the point of taking so much time and effort for such an incredibly slow process?"
And this perfectly illustrates the grandfather's point. Without even stopping his work, the grandfather picked up a single unwoven thread from the ground, handed it to the boy, and told him to break it. The boy snapped the thin thread instantly, right? No effort at all. Then, the grandfather handed him the small piece of woven rope. The boy pulled with all his might, using his absolute full strength, but no way. That woven rope was practically unbreakable.
The grandfather looked at the boy and delivered a metaphor that, well, it changes everything. He said, a single thread is very weak, but when those weak threads are joined together, they make an incredibly strong rope. He explained that our personal efforts are exactly like those threads. A single day of massive, exhausting effort won't change your life, but small, daily efforts, they compound over time into an unbreakable force.
Part 3, Power of Small Steps.
That lesson completely pierced the boy's heart and he shifted his strategy. Let's look at the stark contrast here. Under his old way, he tried forcing 3 hours of studying, running grueling 5-kilometer runs, and, trying to speak perfect English overnight. It was just too much. But his new way radically scaled down. Actually, scratch that, it was completely overhauled. He committed to just 15 minutes of studying. Instead of a 5K, just 5 push-ups a day. And instead of full fluency, he aimed to learn exactly 5 new words a day. He made his goals so remarkably achievable that consistency just became easy. Now, we definitely have to talk about the struggle phase here. When he started this new method, there was 0 immediate results. There were no magic fireworks, and absolutely nobody was praising him for doing 5 measly push-ups. There were days he felt it was entirely useless. But this time, something was different. This time, he didn't stop. He pushed through that initial doubt and just kept adding his one thread every single day.
Part 4, The Compound Effect.
Now, what's really interesting here is the sheer undeniable math of how tiny habits compound. When we look at the actual numbers, that initial 15 minutes of studying naturally and easily grew into a comfortable 2 hours. His starting set of 5 push-ups compounded into 50,
And by simply learning 5 words a day, he steadily built a vocabulary of over 150 new words. It just goes to show, consistency creates a type of growth that massive, short-term efforts simply cannot match.
But, we really have to look beyond the numbers, because the true victory was internal. The absolute biggest change wasn't his vocabulary or his physical strength, it was that his self-confidence returned. He restored his self-belief. He finally realized that massive success isn't some rare gift you're just magically born with, it's simply the steady accumulation of small, daily habits.
Part 5. The ultimate lesson. So how do we actually translate this fable into our own lives? Well, it starts with diagnosing why our grand plans fail in the first place. We really have to realize that we fall into the trap of wanting a changed life in a single day. We constantly rely on the illusion of tomorrow to fix everything. We try to take massive leaps instead of trusting the sturdy, reliable process of taking small steps. And let's be real, waiting for tomorrow just leads to giving up.
We must actively remember the magic of compounding. Keep these physical metaphors in your mind, okay? One single brick doesn't make a house. One tiny drop of water doesn't make an ocean. And one single thread sure doesn't make a strong rope. But when they're stacked together, over and over, they create results that outsiders will look at and literally call magic.
So, the absolutely crucial point is the power of the number 1. Don't wait for a big, perfect moment. Don't wait until you have 3 free hours to start working on your goal. Your focus shouldn't be on the massive finish line, but entirely on taking just one small step today.
The people who actually succeed are the ones who weave their one thread every single day until their hard work eventually forms an unbreakable rope. So I'm challenging you to ask yourself right now, what will your one thread be today? Identify it and start weaving. Thank you so much for exploring this story with me, and I'll catch you next time.